want to just make sure that it is. Shelly's supposed to be tuning in for the next 15 minutes or so to make sure. All right, I think we are live now. Hi, Brian Gillette.
Hello, Radlin and John.
How are you doing, buddy?
Yeah, good to see you. How's everything?
I'm overall, I'm doing good. It's actually a fairly busy time for me. Even though we've got this pandemic going on, the Social Security hearings have not stopped. And I've actually been in a pretty busy period. I've had 18 scheduled hearings over the last 3 weeks.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that's busy under normal circumstances, but then I also have one employee who's not able to work full time now, and some who are working from home sometimes. And so we've had some changes in how we're working. And then I've got the kids at home who are trying to keep up with schoolwork, while my wife, who's a nurse who works for us reviewing medical records, is working at home. So it's pretty crazy busy times.
Well, it's good to be busy for sure. There's so many.
It's better than the alternative. I know talking to other lawyers, this whole pandemic has hit different practice areas in different ways. Some people are pretty much totally out of business. Like I have a friend who does a lot of traffic work, but the traffic courts aren't open, so he's not going to court. But I've been just as busy as ever.
Yeah, we're gonna during this Facebook Live tonight, we're gonna touch briefly on the some of the closure, USCIS and the court closing, what the current status is with those. But thanks for joining us. Why don't you, for those who are tuning in, Brian, why don't you go ahead and Attorney Brian Gillette, who does Social Security work, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what your practice is all about?
Sure. Well, my name's Brian Gillette, and I'm the founder of the Gillette Law Group. Our main office is in Williamsburg, Virginia, but we handle cases all throughout the state of Virginia, and in particular, Social Security disability benefit cases and Virginia retirement system disability claims for state municipal workers. So firefighters, school teachers, police officers, VDOT workers. But our focus is primarily on Social Security disability benefits and Virginia retirement system disability benefits.
Okay.
Excellent.
Awesome.
And for those folks who don't really know much about it, can you tell us a little bit, what exactly is Social Security disability law and how does it work?
Like us, like John and I don't know that much about Social Security disability.
All right, well, there's two main types of Social Security disability. There's, and one of the things that gets confusing is there's probably three names for everything in Social Security law, but one type of benefits called Title II benefits or disability insurance benefits or DIB. But the main thing with disability insurance benefits is it requires that you've worked long enough and recently enough to be insured for benefits and paid into the Social Security system. When you're working, paying your payroll taxes, part of those payroll taxes go to Social Security. And each year when you're working, you can earn up to 4 work credits. In general, you need 20 work credits out of the last 40 quarters in order to be insured for benefits. So this year it takes $1,410 in earnings to earn a work credit. So if you earned 4 times $1,410 this year, you get your 4 work credits. If you have 20 work credits in the last 40 quarters, then you're insured for benefits. There are some exceptions for that. For example, if you're younger, you don't have to have as many work credits, but you have to have worked long enough and recently enough to be insured for benefits. There's another type of benefit called, within Title II benefits or disability insurance benefits, there's also sometimes benefits for disabled children or widows. So sometimes a child or a widow can take advantage of their deceased parent or spouse's earnings record as well. The other type of benefit, main type of benefits called Title 16 benefits or SSI benefits. SSI benefits don't require that you've ever worked, but there's limits on your income and resources, including income and resources of a spouse. Generally, a single person can't have more than $2,000 in resources, and a married couple can't have more than $3,000 in resources. Now, not everything you own is counted as a resource. If you own a home and you live in it, that's not counted as a resource. They don't count one motor vehicle, but money in a bank account, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, IRAs, 401ks, real estate you don't live on, motorcycles, boats, RVs. If they exceed the resource limits, you may not qualify for SSI. SSI is more of a welfare program, whereas disability insurance benefits, people have paid into the system through their payroll taxes over the years when they've been working.
And you focus mostly on Social Security disability benefits, correct? And not the SSI, or do you do both?
I do both. I do both
Okay.
Social Security disability insurance benefits and SSI.
Okay, gotcha.
Now, the medical requirements for all those benefits are the same. They're the same medical requirements, but the main difference between disability insurance benefits and SSI are the non-medical requirements, the having enough work credits or being limited enough in income and resources to qualify.
Okay,
Okay, great.
gotcha.
Well, we've had a lot of questions that already came in, and we're going to shoot all those out there. Do you want to hit the updates on the court closings real fast before we get into the questions?
Yeah, Brian, do you mind? You mind just
Oh,
kind
go
of,
ahead.
and feel free to jump in if you have any
Yeah.
any updates. So we're
Yeah.
just gonna really quickly go because we do this every week, but
Every week we update the court closings and so forth for people that are watching.
right. So immigration is still closed until June the 4th. The embassies are still closed other than for for emergency U.S. citizenship services. Trump's executive order is still in effect, barring anyone who is applying for an immigrant visa, and that's until June 22nd. And the immigration court is closed until May 29th. So the big takeaway from all that is, yes, there are a lot of closures, but we are still filing cases. We are still getting receipts from immigration service because a huge portion of USCIS, most of USCIS is not closed. So these are really only for in-person interviews, biometrics, and so does not affect the majority of cases that we're handling. So file now before everybody files when everything opens up. That's our
Absolutely.
advice.
All right, and I've got my own closing. So the Social Security, local Social Security offices have been closed to visitors for a while now. I think that's started in March, if I recall correctly. And I believe most of the Social Security employees are not working in the local offices, but working from home. The State Disability Determination Service, who are the folks who actually work on the cases making the first two decisions, also are working from home. And once you've been turned down twice and request a hearing, there's the hearing office. They are also closed. So the hearings that I've been doing over the last couple of months now have been by telephone only. And I think there's just a few people that go into the Social Security hearing offices to deal with mail and faxes a couple of times a week. But we're still filing new claims. We're still filing appeals. We're still requesting hearings. We're still doing hearings. It's just in a slightly different way.
Okay, good. That is one of the questions that was asked here is whether business is still moving forward with these Social Security disability claims and whether people should still consider filing. And it sounds like the answer is absolutely yes.
Yeah, with Social Security, there's many claims filed every year, and you want to get in line as soon as it's appropriate.
Sound familiar?
Very familiar.
This is what we are saying, is to get in line with immigration, because you file and then you wait and then you wait some more and then you wait and then you wait and then we're ready for business. But yes, I think it's a really similar situation.
So if you think you may
Sounds like it.
qualify, that you should go ahead and contact you and move forward.
Yes. Sometimes people think they have to be out of work for a year before they can apply. And while your disabling condition has to have lasted or be expected to last a year, you don't have to wait till you've been out of work a year before you apply.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
And with regard to the telephonic care, I'm interested to know how that is for you and for your client, and whether you feel like, okay, this is not really working. I'm not really able to express myself and express my client's case very well through the phone. How are you finding that? Because USCIS has talked about attorneys appearing through the phone with the client sitting in front of the immigration officer because they don't believe they can put the social distancing in between me and my client. They can with the client and the immigration officer, but you know, these are small offices. So I'm just curious to know how that's going.
Well, that is an interesting question. Before the pandemic, individuals had a right to have an in-person hearing with a judge, and many people request that. The judges aren't doctors; they don't do medical exams, but there's a certain amount of communication that goes on through body language, and sometimes it helps to see people. If someone has mental illness and they don't keep up their hygiene and their grooming, and they have trouble paying attention and concentrating, and that's something that could be observed by the judge. You might want the judge to see or smell that. And so, I think ideally an in-person hearing is best, but for years now, we've been doing video teleconferencing hearings, sort of like this. Many of the hearings I go to are in Newport News, and there's a big screen TV there with a video camera pointed at us, and the judge is in Norfolk and has a big screen TV there with a camera pointed at the judge, and we see the judge on the big screen TV. And I've been doing those types of hearings for years. So far, they've been optional, but now with the pandemic, the Social Security hearing offices have been closed, and the judges are not going into the office. They're working from their alternate duty stations or their homes.
Yeah.
And the clients are given the choice of, you can have a telephone hearing or you can wait until we do in-person hearings again. And right now, the earliest you're going to get an in-person hearing is September.
Ooh.
But you don't know what's going to happen between now and September. As we open up, is there going to be a resurgence of the virus and we're going to shut back down again? Also, I think the Social Security hearing office got a little bit of criticism from some folks about being a little slow to close down. Many people applying for disability are in high risk class. They tend to be older. Most of them have some sort of illness. That's why they're applying for disability. Some are immune compromised. And so some folks were saying, hey, is it really a great idea to concentrate all these people who are at risk in one place to have hearings? And it sounds like the immigration hearing rooms are similar to the Social Security hearing rooms.
Yeah.
They're not very large. There's the judge, there's a person who's running hearing equipment, there's the attorney, the claimant, there's a vocational expert. So 1, 2, 3, 4, probably 5 people in a hearing room. Some of the judges are older, many are veterans, some have illnesses or make them predisposed to infection. Some of the judges might not be comfortable coming back into those hearing rooms and sitting down to have 3 or 4 hearings a day, 2 or 3 days a week. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty about when will you be able to get an in-person hearing. I can tell you right now, the earliest is going to be September, but I wouldn't count on it being September.
Right. Well, it's good that you all were already equipped to handle this situation. I mean, you already have had a lot of experience with video conferencing, so that's good.
Well, we're not doing video, not right now.
Telephone, yeah.
It's only telephone.
Oh,
And
only
so-
telephone. I'm sorry, I misheard. I thought you said they were.
Well, under normal circumstances, we've been doing some video hearings, but now with the pandemic, it's just telephone. So the choice is telephone or wait till you can have an in-person hearing, and who knows when that's going to be. I have noticed it does seem like most of the judges do let the claimants talk a little bit longer. I think the judges have concern about the applicants or claimants feeling like they were heard, that they had an opportunity to tell their story of what's going on. So in some ways that's better, but there have been technical problems with delays in starting the hearing, getting everybody on the phone lines at the same time. People have dropped off and you have to pause the hearing to get people back onto the call. I had a couple of hearings earlier this week where afterwards they said, oh, the recording equipment didn't record it, which can be a problem. We may have to redo the hearings depending on what the judge's decision is.
And tell us again,
go ahead.
If you tell us again, if you do qualify for disability benefits, how much are they and how long do they last? That's something that folks want to know.
Okay, that's a good question. Okay, it depends again on the type of benefit. Disability insurance benefits, the one that you paid into the system through your payroll taxes, those benefits vary based upon how much you paid into the system over the years when you were working. Right now, most recipients receive between $800 and $1,800 a month, but the average benefit amount this year is about $1,258 a month. Now, also with those benefits, once you've been receiving those benefits for 2 years, you qualify for Medicare. With SSI, the maximum benefit for an individual is $783 a month. For couples, so if you have a husband and wife who are both receiving SSI, the maximum benefit between the two of them is $1,175. And if you receive SSI, you also get Medicaid. Now, SSI, because it is a welfare benefit, and remember, it's affected by income and resources, it's more affected by income than disability insurance benefits. And so your SSI can be reduced for any earnings you might have, or also potentially for earnings your spouse has. And also, this is one that people don't recognize or don't understand necessarily. Many times, if you're getting SSI, you haven't been working, you don't have any money. That's why you qualify for SSI. You're living with family. If you're living with someone and you're not paying your fair share of the household expenses, your SSI benefits get reduced. They consider that as income. And so oftentimes an individual's SSI benefit will be reduced by about a third because they're living in someone else's home and not paying their fair share of the rent. Now, if they start paying their fair share of the rent, the benefit amount can increase. Or if they move out, now that they've been approved and they have money coming in from SSI, if they move out and are paying their own household expenses, their benefits can go up to the maximum of $783.
Okay.
So if you've been paying in for Social Security disability, since that's based on what folks paying into through their payroll taxes, do you have to be a U.S. citizen to qualify, or do you just have to have been paying taxes, having with deductions from your paycheck?
Good question.
Well, that's a complicated question, and it depends on what type of benefit you're seeking. But immigrants who are permanent residents or are lawfully present foreign workers who've paid into the Social Security system are often eligible for disability benefits, disability insurance benefits. Those are the ones where you're paying into the system. Oftentimes, you're going to be eligible. You also may have the same requirements for having enough work credits over the relevant period of time. For SSI, it's even more complicated. You have to be in a qualified alien category, and you must meet certain conditions that qualify you. If you fall into this case, the Social Security website, ssa.gov, is actually a pretty good website, has a lot of information, and there is something called a spotlight. Sure, it's called Spotlight on SSI Benefits for Aliens. Spotlights are a little, it's sort of like frequently asked questions that are beefed up a little bit with a little more information and sometimes cites to other relevant information, but there is a particular spotlight on SSI benefits for aliens. If you Google spotlight on SSI benefits for aliens, or you go to the ssa.gov website and you put into their search box spotlight on SSI benefits for aliens, you'll get that page, and it'll go into more detail on that.
Well, this is really good information, because I think there's a misconception, at least from folks that I've talked to. I think a lot of people think that they have to be a U.S. citizen to qualify for these types of benefits. And you're saying it's based, you have to meet all the other requirements, of course, but if you've been getting a paycheck and your employer has been deducting taxes, withholdings that go to Social Security and federal tax and everything else, then you're eligible just like anyone else.
You may
Well,
be
any US
eligible.
citizen, I should say.
You
May
may
be
be eligible. You should look into it. Now,
So wait,
you know-
Brian, hold on a second. Can our community contact you if they want to see whether they're eligible and whether the eligibility part? I mean, this eligibility probably falls under the whole eligibility category, right? That you guys kind of run through with a potential client.
sure, they can contact us. I'll tell you, I really haven't had these types of issues come up too often, because oftentimes people have contacted Social Security and applied before they reach out to us. But certainly that's something, if somebody had a question, that's something we could talk with them about. Certainly have them let us know that they saw us on your Facebook live stream, or you referred us. We'd be happy to talk with them.
Okay, awesome. So I'm gonna throw a question here that I get asked a lot. So I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Uh-oh.
A lot of people say, "Hey, Radlin, you don't really need an immigration lawyer to file your immigration paperwork. What's the benefit of hiring an attorney? So what's the benefit of hiring a Social Security disability lawyer like yourself in order to file this claim?" I mean, I know the answer, but I would like you to tell the answer
right,
to
well-
those who are watching.
Like you said, you don't have to have an attorney to apply for Social Security disability. And, the folks who work at the Social Security office will help you file an application, but it's not their job to help you get approved. And they won't necessarily be there to answer the phone, to answer your questions, and to guide you through the process. Many times people just don't know what they don't know. They don't understand what's important, how to gather the information they need to prove their case. Many times people will say, well, I've got this condition or that condition. Do I qualify? I don't know. Or they say, I've had this treatment and that treatment. Do I qualify? I don't know. That's because they're not focusing on what's important. You need to be able to show not just that you're diagnosed with something. Everybody who's applying for disability benefits has been diagnosed with something. Not just that you're getting treatment. Everybody who's applying for disability is hopefully getting some kind of treatment. The real issue is, what are the symptoms that remain despite getting appropriate treatment, and how do those symptoms keep you from performing work you've done in the past 15 years and any other work? And there's ideas we can give people about, hey, that condition that you say is really affecting your ability to work, you're not seeing any doctors for that. If you want that condition to be taken seriously, you need to be seeing a doctor. What objective medical testing can be done to document exactly what your problem is and how severe it is? Is there a doctor who's treating you who might be able to give us some opinions about what your limitations are and your ability to engage in work activities? Sometimes people will get turned down and they won't appeal, and they'll call me years later and I'll say, you applied 4 years ago, you got turned down. Why didn't you appeal? Well, I didn't know I could appeal. Well, it was in the letter turning you down saying you could appeal, but people sometimes just get frustrated and they get the denial letter and they say, screw it, I'm done. And they give up. Well, part of what we do is we help to encourage people to, because it's a long, frustrating process. Over the years, the time it takes varies. Sometimes it gets longer, sometimes it gets shorter, but a lot of what we do is to help take people's frustration and turn it into a positive direction. You can't control everything, but start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. What can you do to help make your case stronger? and we give them ideas of,
Yeah. To make
what
the
kind
case
of doctors
stronger.
should you see, what kind of tests should you get, that sort of thing.
And you file it. I mean, if they hire you to do it, you actually file it and you represent them, right? I mean, it's not just giving advice.
Well, I'll tell you that we oftentimes are not actually filing the original application. That has gotten harder over the years. Let's talk about how can you apply. All right. So one way you can apply is you can call up Social Security on their 800 number, 1-800-772-1213, and tell them you want to apply for disability insurance benefits or SSI or both. In normal times, they would schedule a time for you to come into the Social Security office and meet with someone and get your application filed. I believe these days they are doing it over the telephone. There's another way of applying. Many people can also apply online. They can go to the Social Security website, ssa.gov/apply for disability, with no spaces in between. Now, I want to caution people. Sometimes people go on the internet and they type in apply for Social Security disability, apply for disability, and they end up on a website that they think is the government's website, but it's not the government's website.
Yeah, that happens a lot with us too, where people are like, what do you mean you paid for the form? I'm so confused right now.
Right.
Like, well, we paid
Right.
$100 for the citizenship form. Like, it's free. No.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, it's really similar. I mean, some of the similar issues that we have with immigration.
Yeah, there's
But
like lead generation companies who get your information and sell it to people who then call you. Or there's some firms that, you think you're applying to Social Security, but next thing you know, you've got a representative. You didn't know you were hiring a representative. That's the other thing is you don't have to be an attorney to represent people in Social Security disability claims. Now, if you want to get paid a fee, there is a test you're supposed to take. So why would somebody want to get an attorney as opposed to a non-attorney advocate? Well, for one thing, non-attorney advocates cannot pursue your claim in federal court if it has to go that far. And also, generally, attorneys and non-attorney advocates are charging the same. Social Security withholds from past due benefits, if you're approved, our fee. And if we want Social Security to withhold our fee, our fee agreements have to comply with certain requirements. So pretty much everybody is using the same fee agreement that conforms with Social Security's requirements, so that Social Security will withhold the fee and pay us. So if you're gonna hire somebody and you're gonna pay an attorney the same as you'd pay a non-attorney, why don't you hire an attorney?
Right.
And
Good point.
you help them avoid all the pitfalls as well, right?
Right. Sometimes there's two big questions on the application. One is they're going to ask you, have you or do you intend to apply for supplemental security income, SSI, the second type of benefit, the one that has the limited income and resources? Well, sometimes people will check yes to that, but they don't qualify for it. They don't know that they don't qualify for it. They've got they're married, their spouse has a full-time job, they're working full-time, they've got $100,000 in the bank. They're not going to qualify for SSI. And if you check yes, you have or you do intend to apply for SSI, it's going to slow down the processing of your claim. So you don't want to check that box if you don't qualify for SSI. So that's a big one. The other big issue is going to be, what's the date you're claiming you became disabled? You want to push that date as far back as is justified. So if you just use the day you're filing, but you've been out of work for 3 years, you could be giving up the potential of benefits that you could be due for the past. And that brings up another issue of delaying your application. For disability insurance benefits, you can only get benefits for up to 1 year prior to when you apply. So even if you've been disabled for 6 years and you can prove you were disabled way back then, you can only get past due benefits going back a year from when you apply. With SSI, the earliest you can get benefits is the month after you apply or the month after you're found disabled, whichever is later. So especially for somebody who's been out of work for 18 months. If you wait more than 18 months to apply, every month that passes, you're losing out on benefits in the past that you could have gotten if you can prove your claim, just because of your delay in filing.
Okay, hold on, just stop for 1 second. All right, just stop. How in the heck are people getting through this process without somebody like you? I mean, that's crazy. I was trying to piece it all together. I'm sitting here taking notes. I'm like, what are you talking about right now? Let's move on to a question.
Yeah, and just
with a fact pattern. I'm just like, no
Before
way.
we get to this very detailed fact pattern that one of our that somebody submitted to us for you, I just want to make sure that we're clear, because again, talking to people, I get people that seem confused. For Social Security disability benefits, the disability does not have to be related in any way to the work that you've recently left, correct? That's workers'
correct.
compensation when that happens. Social Security disability, no matter what your disability, where it came from, you can apply for it, correct? Because I think some people think that the disability has to be linked to the work you were doing.
So
Well,
unlike
John and I had this discussion.
Yeah, unlike workers' compensation, where you have to show that your injury is related to an on-the-job accident or a disease related to your employment, or a car accident where you have to prove that the injuries were related to the car accident, Social Security has to consider all of your conditions in combination, both physical and mental, in evaluating your ability to return to work.
Yeah, Brian, God bless you for doing this.
Mhm.
All right, here's a question.
Okay, sorry, this is a long fact pattern that was submitted.
No, this is good. This is kind of gets us out of the weeds of what you just said.
We might go right back into the weeds. So we'll see.
Well, no, I think it's good, but I just needed a mental break. All right, this is the kind of stuff I can kind of relate to. I understand this. My brother was born with a congenital heart defect called tricuspid atresia. He's had multiple surgeries, 4 as a child and 1 so far as an adult. He is now 40 and is beginning to have some issues that his cardiologist feels is related to his condition, such as tiring easily, etc. I know tricuspid atresia is on the list of conditions that Social Security disability will cover. How hard is it to file and get approved? First question. He tried after his surgery several years ago and was denied. Would be interested to know if he used an attorney. Will he need to quit his job? You addressed that a little bit earlier. He is also now uninsured, which adds to the stress of everything. Any suggestions I can give him would be greatly appreciated. First thing I'm going to say is to call Brian Gillette. That's going to be my first suggestion.
Yeah, that's definitely the route I would take.
But and Brian, you take phone calls like this, right? I mean, I saw that you do a free consultation, and why wouldn't anyone go and talk to Brian? But anyway, go ahead and take a stab at the answer. I'm sure you could handily answer every single one of those questions, but go for it.
Well, I would also say it's great that family members want to help out other family members, but it's usually best for the person who would be making the claim to reach out and call us. Sometimes family members don't have all the information we need, and sometimes the individuals just aren't on board with pursuing the claim. A caring sibling might think that the brother should stop work and apply, but the brother may say, no, I'm going to work as long as I can, as hard as I can, even though it's difficult and I'm missing a lot of time from work. I enjoy working and I want to keep on working, and I'm not on board with this. So, certainly the sibling could, with the permission of the individual, be on the call with us. But it's usually best for us to talk to the actual person who's making the claim. So the first thing that jumped out at me there in that scenario was I heard, does he need to stop work? Well, that's an interesting question. I guess the first thing I would say is, how much is that person making? Are they making more than $1,260 a month? Because if they are, they're going to be ineligible at the first step of the evaluation process. And then we could talk about, how much are they working? Because the more you're working, the less likely you are to be approved, even if your earnings don't rise to the level that make you ineligible. Whenever somebody's working, they look at what you're doing, and they do have a tendency to say, well, if you can do that, we think you could, do something else full time. Or maybe you're voluntarily keeping your earnings below that certain amount. So that's certainly something to talk to somebody about. I usually say you need to decide what direction you want to go in, because if you try to head in two directions at once, working and applying for disability, you're usually not going to get very far in either direction. So, most folks are going to try and work as long as they can until they just can't do it anymore. And, so we can talk about, when's a good time. Sometimes if you have to stop work because you have to have a surgery, sometimes I'm talking with teachers who limp through to the end of the school year, and then it's summer vacation and they say, well, I don't know if I can go back again. Maybe I should apply. So those are conversations you can have with somebody like me who knows, what they're doing and can give you an idea. Certainly we can't give any guarantees about you will win or you won't win, but every case has strengths and weaknesses, and we can talk about, what makes your case stronger, what makes your case weaker, what you might be able to do to make a case stronger. During that question, I heard talk about diagnosis. I heard talk about treatment. Well, that's the start. The real focus is on what are the symptoms that remain despite getting appropriate treatment for your conditions, and how do those symptoms keep you from doing your work, the work you've done over the last 15 years, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week consistently. But also, particularly when you're under 50 years of age, they look at what other work can you do? Maybe you can't do the work you've been doing over the last 15 years, but you could do something a little less demanding. Now, when you turn 50 and you turn 55, the Social Security rules do start changing. Do you start making it a little bit easier to get approved? But
They won't make me do any work.
That's why it's important to talk with somebody who's been down this road before, knows what's important, knows what you need to prove to help evaluate the case.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And we'll ask for this again, this contact information, but what is your phone number?
757-220-4529.
Okay, awesome.
And you've been doing this a long time. Are there certain patterns, certain cases that you tend to see over and over again?
Well, common problems that lead to people applying for disability are back disorders, degenerative joint disease, diabetes, heart disease, lung disease, Parkinson's, head injuries, multiple sclerosis, mental illness, cancer. But, while generally you don't get approved because you're diagnosed with something, the diagnosis is the start. It's what are the symptoms and how do they keep you from working? That really needs to be the focus. There is something called a compassionate allowance list. Compassionate allowance list is a list of conditions that unfortunately are really severe and likely terminal. There are conditions like Lou Gehrig's disease is on there, rare cancers that are usually incurable. And the significance of the compassionate allowance list is not, if you've been diagnosed with that, you win. The compassionate allowance list provides for expedited processing and evaluation of the claim. So if you have a diagnosis of a condition that's on that list, there's going to be some description of, hey, instead of giving us everything, if it's some cancer, it might be, we need a pathology report and some other test result or a note from a doctor that confirms the diagnosis, and that'll be enough for us to process the claim and get it approved. The whole idea behind the compassionate allowance list is these are conditions where the person likely would meet the requirements, and we want to get these processed more quickly, and so we're going to limit what we're asking for so we can make a quicker decision. But the focus shouldn't just be on the diagnosis and the treatment. It should be what are the symptoms that remain and how do they limit your activities, particularly things like sitting, standing, walking, lifting, carrying, paying attention, concentrating, following instructions, those sorts of things.
Wow.
So there has to be a connection, a nexus is what it sounds like to me, between the symptoms and how
You have to have what's called, so there's a 5-step process. Are you engaged in substantial gainful activity? We've talked about that. Do you have a medically determinable impairment? That's a physical or a mental condition that's backed up by medical documentation.
Sounds pretty broad.
Yeah, I mean, it needs to be a medically determinable impairment, a physical or a mental condition. It's not a symptom. You can't say, well, I have pain and I'm disabled. Well, you may have pain, but we need to link that to a medically determinable impairment. What is the condition that's causing that pain? And then in the other direction, we have to say, how does that pain keep you from working at the kind of work that you've done over the last 15 years or any other job? Then the third step, so substantial gainful activity, medically determinable impairment. Next, they look at, do you meet a listing? Listings are something we haven't discussed yet. Listings are very specific requirements for various conditions. You can Google adult listings and you'll see there's a bunch of different listings, and they usually have very specific requirements. If you have this diagnosis with this symptom and that symptom with these effects, and these lab results, or this x-ray finding, they're very specific. If you meet a listing and you're not engaged in substantial gainful activity, you're going to be approved. But most people don't meet a listing.
Okay, so what the person who wrote the question, is that what she meant by this is the tricuspid thing is covered? Is that what she meant? Like it's in the listing?
She might say that she saw a listing that talks about it. I would have to check the compassion allowance list,
okay.
but I doubt that it's on the compassion allowance list.
Okay.
After the listings, if you don't meet a listing, then they're going to look at what's your residual functional capacity. In other words, what's the most you can do despite all the symptoms and limitations you have? And could you do any of your past relevant work? That's any of the jobs that you've done over the last 15 years. If you can do any of the jobs you've done over the last 15 years, they're going to turn you down. Even if it's not the job you were just doing before you stopped work, it's a job you did 10 years ago. If you could go back to that kind of work again, they'll say, well, go back and do that kind of work again. If you can't do any of the jobs you've done over the last 15 years, then they're going to look at, is there any other work that you can do 8 hours a day, 5 days a week consistently? So if you're under 50, that's any other job. If you're over 50, if you can't do the kind of work you've done in the past and you're limited to a sedentary or a sit-down job, generally a job that doesn't require lifting more than 10 pounds or standing more than 2 hours in an 8-hour work shift, and you don't have transferable skills to a sedentary job, then they will say you should be found disabled. At age 55, that increases to light work. If you can't do the work you've done over the last 15 years, you're limited to light work, don't have any transferable skills, you win. Light work generally doesn't require lifting more than 20 pounds, but might involve standing and walking up to 6 hours in an 8-hour day.
What if you turn 50 somewhere along the line in this whole process?
Sorry guys, I'm checking questions.
Do you refile, or do you change what you're asking for, or how does that process change?
Well, just the rules change for you when you turn 50, and actually when you're within about 6 months of 50 or 55, they can fudge the rules. It's called a non-mechanical application of the grid rules. They can stretch it by about 6 months and apply the rules about 6 months early. But you don't have to reapply.
Right.
You might have applied when you were 48, but while the claim's going on, you turned 50, and they may say, well, we're not going to approve you as of that date back when you were 48, but as of age 50, when the rules change, we can approve you as of that date.
Great.
Well, I have a question here.
All right, let's go.
Popped up. Okay, just saw your live stream about SSI disability claim. Actually, I want to ask about that. We filed SS disability claim for Nelson here in the Philippines because his right eye has glaucoma and almost blind. We went to the US Embassy here, filed this claim. Unfortunately, we received a letter that was denied and told us to get a lawyer. But since we are here, we thought it would be hard to get a lawyer. Yep, makes sense. It has been 1 year since after the denial. What should we do? Reapply again here or go there in the United States? Both of us are US citizens, or both of them are US citizens.
But they're in the Philippines.
Okay, so they don't need to come here to apply. That seems to be drastic, but because it's been a year, he would need to reapply. And like I mentioned before, sometimes people get turned down and they don't appeal. That's that's a big mistake people make. You know, of people who apply, a little less than a third get approved on their initial application. And
Oh, wait,
then
hold on a
when they,
second. No, a third. Less than a third
Or less
get
than a
approved.
third.
Okay. Got it. I just wanted to,
and when they get turned down and then they appeal, that's called a request for reconsideration. Last I looked, about 11% of people get approved on reconsideration. So if you don't get approved on your initial application, you're probably going to get turned down on your first appeal. Then the next step is to request a hearing with a judge. And that's actually your best chance of getting approved. The amount of people who get approved
okay.
on at the hearing has varied over time. But right now, I'd say it's probably in the 50% range. 50% of people who request a hearing get approved. At times that's been as
Oh,
high
okay.
as 60%. It's been as low as 45%, and it can vary from judge to judge.
Okay, awesome.
So part of
So
this
I would
success
recommend
deals
that they
with
reapply,
boy, how tenacious you are about it.
and get an attorney in the Philippines to help them.
Okay. So you mean an attorney, a Social Security, U.S. Social Security disability lawyer to help them in the Philippines?
Right, so there's an organization called the National Organization of Social Security Claimants Representatives. It's NO,
Okay.
National Organization, it's just NOSSCR, NOSCR, NOSSCR, and they do have a lawyer referral service, and they could refer them to an
Okay.
attorney who helps people in their area.
Okay. But this is too far for you to be handling because it's not in the jurisdiction of,
Yeah, I generally, while I could handle
Hampton Roads,
Social
is that-
Security
is that correct?
cases anywhere, I generally I handle cases in North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware. Just because
the Philippines
I
is
mean,
really
under normal
nice.
circumstances, I'm
Just-
driving to
Just
the
like
hearing
Delaware.
location.
Okay. Excellent.
All right.
So do we have any other
I didn't get that last
other
part.
questions on our list of questions? Oh,
Let's see.
Well, I had a
we're just looking at some, if we have any additional questions. I think you're frozen a little bit, Brian.
yeah.
Brian frozen.
he's
Yeah, at
frozen.
times
Oh,
I've
there
seen
you
a
are.
message that
Okay.
says my internet connection is unstable.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've known you for a long time, and we know what a great guy you are. What other than you said you've been really super busy, which is great, but I also know that you do a lot of really cool stuff in your community. Have you had time to do anything other than go to hearings and work on files?
Well, I'm
During the
on the board of directors of this. I'm on the board of directors of the Center for Child and Family Services, a nonprofit whose headquarters is in Hampton, but we also have offices in Williamsburg. And obviously, the pandemic has resulted in a great deal of change with the organization. First, we had a big fundraiser concert, Country for Kids. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but we've been doing it for I think more than 20 years now. And
Wow.
it scheduled for we had a concert scheduled for March at the Hampton Convention Center, and the first thing we were looking at is, well, should we cancel that? Is that going forward? We had a lot of calls to discuss that. It has been rescheduled now. I think it's rescheduled for November, Friday in November, if I remember correctly, and hopefully we'll be in a position for that to take place at that point. But we'll see. We also had to talk about the staff and when we were going to close the office, and were we going to be able to keep on everybody? And fortunately, the organization was able to work with Old Point National Bank and get a PPP loan to keep us going. They were really
Great.
great with that, which is
Yes.
not with some of the banks. Um, not all the banks were successful as helping people as they were. So they've been a good partner and supporter of our organization over the years. In fact, they were the title sponsor for the Country for Kids concert. I think we did have some employees who may have had exposure. And then we had to look at, how are we going to try to continue to deliver services, and what are the sources of funding for that. So quite a few meetings and strategy meetings and conversations about how to move forward with the organization. But I'm the past president of the board. We have a new board president, and he's really been doing a great job staying in touch with our executive director and keeping the organization headed in the right direction. So we like to say
Good
that,
for you.
every challenge is an opportunity. So we're looking for how can we be of service to the community? How can we deliver services in new ways? And, we've had some of the staff doing different Facebook Live presentations on, parenting while you're trying to work at home, and dealing with
probably watch that.
stress and substance abuse issues, and, how to talk with kids about the stressful situations. And so anyhow, I'm really proud of that organization. I've been involved for quite a few years now. And one of our strengths is that we're very adaptive, and we adapt to different needs in the community. And we've got some really great people who work for us who care very deeply about helping people. And that's why we've had some people who've worked for us in 20, 30 years.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's
That's
fantastic.
a wonderful testament to the
I'm personally
organization.
I'm looking for a tutor to help me relearn third grade math so I can teach it to my daughter.
Long division. Whenever I get involved, there's tears, and they're not my tears. All right. Well, we really appreciate
Yeah,
that
Brian.
you jumped on, and I know this information is super helpful
Yeah, it is. Thank
to
you so
our
much.
community. And if you don't, let me see here. I wrote down your number. It's 757-220-4529. If you all want to call Brian to evaluate your case and help you if you've already filed it. As you can see, Brian is a walking social security disability dictionary, and he knows how to use all those words. So
Yep.
please reach out to him.
He's a great guy and a great lawyer.
Great guy, super amazing guy, and also he just really truly cares about his clients. He cares about his team at work, and we know that just from personal knowledge of hanging out with Brian, once a month in one of our groups. So again, if you all have any questions, give him a buzz. What other way can people reach you, Brian, other than the phone number?
Well, we have a website, GilletteLawGroup.com.
Okay.
We have a lot of frequently asked questions, and if you're interested in what a Social Security hearing's like, I have a video about that. If you go to GilletteLawGroup.com/hearing, you can watch that, get some pointers for a Social Security hearing, what a hearing's like. But the best way is just to pick up the phone, give us a call, and set up a time to talk with me, and I'd be happy to do it.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
All right.
Any parting words?
I would just say we're going through some difficult times, and it's important to give everybody a break. Think about what everybody's going through, and show some compassion and patience, and help each other get through these difficult times.
Thanks, Brian.
Good words. Good words.
Absolutely. I thought it was gonna be like your email address or something, but that's even better. See, this guy is awesome. All right.
Now,
Well,
people want to
we'll
talk to
next
me.
time.
They'll figure out how to find me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
We
thanks,
really,
Brian.
really appreciate it.
Great seeing you, buddy.
All right, we're over and outing.
I welcome the opportunity to talk with you, and you all are great folks. And whenever I have anybody with immigration questions, I always have them give you a call, because I know you all care about your clients a great deal as well.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
All right.
Take care.
Sure.